We are making the largest investment in this country's history in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to combat the existential threat of climate change, among many other provisions. In other words, what the president has done and what we have done is said, you know what, let's look at the crises facing working families and the planet. Let's address those crises.
So we just saw Bernie introducing a lot of the details about this really, really robust package. That's honestly, it's a beautiful piece of legislation. It's not exactly what everybody asked for in the beginning, but the way that Bernie did this, to his credit, is he went in with a $6 trillion proposal. Very, very, very large proposal that, was just excellent. And, he fought for it, and ultimately the compromise is still really, really, really nice because, he started big and they compromised him down, and that compromise still is pretty good. $3.5 trillion is a huge investment in our infrastructure, no matter how you slice that. And when you get into what it actually includes, it's even better. So you see, achieves 80% clean electricity by 2030, clean energy and vehicle tax incentives, civilian climate corps, which is something the Sunrise Movement has been fighting really, really hard for. This is an avenue through which folks will be hired into union jobs that would be addressing the climate, which is, one of the key factors of the Green New Deal. Also, many of the provisions that were in the PRO Act are going to be in this bill, which is amazing. The PRO Act, it stands for Protect the Right to Organize. It essentially is stopping the reign of exploitation that corporations and businesses have been doing to workers that are just trying to organize. And so it opens the door for unions to become a much bigger part of our system, which is awesome. So, also Medicare expansion. So they're going to drop the age down to 60. They're going to include dental, vision, and hearing as part of Medicare, which is a huge, huge increase. Elder care, home care, universal pre-K, paid family and medical leave, something that we've been fighting for a long time. And finally, an extension of the child tax credit, which could potentially set up an electoral fight depending on when it's decided that will expire. If that's during an election year, that's going to be a huge part of the messaging, if they're smart. So then how it's paid for. Democrats, specifically Bernie, have proposed expanding funding for the IRS so that they can go after wealthy tax evaders, as well as international tax reform so that they also can't flee to go to other countries to avoid our higher tax rates. Corporate tax hikes, so going from 21% to 28%, which, by the way, is less than under Obama and which was less than under President Reagan. So to anybody who's out here saying, whoa, that's too high, oh my goodness. It was in the 30s under President Reagan, so give me a break. I mean, if we're to the right of President Reagan on corporate tax rate, you gotta know that there's been a slide to the right over time. And you gotta be able to see that. And then lastly, a potential capital gains tax increase. So that would tax people on speculative wealth as opposed to their income. A lot of wealthy folks evade a lot of taxation by saying, well, give me like a $1 salary. And then they secretly make all of that money flow to them through speculative types of income. So, assets and things like that, rather than coming through a traditional paycheck. So capital gains tax kind of takes care of that because it taxes their gains on speculative kind of assets. So it's for the most part, this is a paid for plan. So here comes the hiccups. Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia is, Exxon, the oil lobby, has called him their kingmaker because he is the architect of dismantling climate legislation, and they're depending on him to get rid of any major transformations that would help us address climate change and save the planet from disaster, because, he's really cozy with the coal lobby and with these oil lobbyists. And so he doesn't care. He doesn't care about his constituents. He doesn't care about what the Democratic Party wants to do. He doesn't care about the Biden or Bernie agenda. And so, he's on the record saying that fossil fuels should play the cleanest part to help clean up the global climate, which is just an anti-science, delusional, nonsense. So he also he's put in a hard line against this infrastructure bill, saying that he wants it to be completely paid for. And what he means by that is he actually wants to make sure that it's not paid for in the most reasonable way to pay for that, which would be to tax the people who have the most money to be able to contribute, who are sometimes paying less than 0% in taxes. So when we talk about people who have paid nothing in taxes, and we look around and we see, cable cars in Portland literally melting because of climate change, it's time to look at this and kind of poke at this logic a little bit, because guess what? We're the ones who are pro-paying for this plan. We're the ones who are suggesting things like IRS expansion, which would bring in the money that's being criminally deprived of the government through tax evasion. That Joe Manchin doesn't support that. Joe Manchin doesn't support raising the corporate tax rate. Joe Manchin doesn't support capital gains tax increase. All Joe Manchin supports is taxing the working class, putting the tax burden in a regressive way so that you and I, people who make under $400,000 a year, have the burden of the taxation to pay for what corporations are doing to our planet. So the issue here, and this is what it kind of boils down to, is all these things, like this laundry list of great priorities, they're awesome. They're so good. They're not necessarily as far as we really need to go, but they're a huge start. But none of it's going to happen unless President Biden decides that it's worth fighting for what's right. Whether it's $15 minimum wage, workers' rights, health care improvements and expansion, whatever it is. Joe Biden is not willing to fight. When Joe Manchin says no, Joe Biden goes home and says, all right, I guess I can't do it. And that's unacceptable, because you know what? We're going to pay the price. In 2022, mark my words, if we don't pass infrastructure proposals that are bold and significant and make American workers notice what Democrats have been up to, Democrats don't have any ground to stand on. They're going to get wiped out in the midterms. They're going to lose the Senate. They're going to lose the House. There's going to be a slew of bullshit investigations that are put for any random thing that Hunter Biden has ever done in his whole life. And we're going to lose the whole, presidential term to just bullshit. And you want to know why? It's because the people are sick and tired of corporatist politicians listening to lobbyists over the will of the people. And it happens on both sides. Democrats do it, Republicans do it. But right now, Joe Manchin is basically deciding that Democrats should just lose the whole era. And if they don't pass this, the future looks pretty bleak for a lot of reasons. So I say this, not to be, not to rain on everybody's parade with how exciting this bill is, because it is. It's a really good bill. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It's one of the best things. It's actually super surprising to see such a good bill be approved of by a lot of Senate Democratic leadership. That did take me by surprise. I thought they would be like, no, Bernie, that's way too much. Oh my goodness, you're radical socialist commie, And they didn't do that. They've expressed a lot of support for a lot of these ideas. But once again, we come to Joe Biden. You got to use the bully pulpit. All you got to do, go to West Virginia, host an event. At your event, you talk about all the great things that are in this proposal, say all the wonderful things, And then you tell that crowd, you tell the people that are gathered, you tell the televised audience, you tell them, Joe Manchin is why we can't get this done. Joe Manchin wants to stand in the way of this, and he wants to stop Democrats from being able to deliver a bold agenda to the working class. Why is he doing that, folks? And you drag him through the mud. And you tell him, you either get on board and support what we're trying to do. You support the things that you yourself got voted in to help advance, to support. Stop voting with Trump 60% of the time and get on board with some actual meaningful legislation that doesn't just create tax breaks for the rich. Where was this how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? When we passed 2017 tax cuts for the rich that added trillions to the deficit. Where was this energy then? Oh, it's only when we try to do things that help the working class. Isn't that funny? So, we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Most likely by the end of the month, we'll know kind of how the odds stack about if we're going to get infrastructure bills at all, or if we're going to get just the really small bipartisan one, or also the 3.5 trillion, or if that $3.5 trillion figure goes way down. So a lot's going to be developing, but what you can know for sure is this isn't going to happen unless Biden chooses to fight for it.